Well, people can find me best on my website because unfortunately, although I try to distribute, scientific information and only scientific information, it gets increasingly blocked on all kinds of channels and media. So my website is Geert Vanden Bossche, and then .org, O-R-G.
Okay. GeertVandenBossche.org. I know that you're also on Twitter and that your website can be found through your Twitter bio. I will say, to the extent that platforms are taking down the material that you're putting up, this is madness.
Yeah, I know.
Right? This is madness. You are a domain expert. You are clearly motivated by concern. What you're saying is, whether or not it is correct, it is perfectly rational. It is highly logical and can be interpreted by anyone who has the scientific training enough to follow such an argument. That the idea that you are somehow a hazard by virtue of engaging in very serious questions on which a great deal of human well-being rests is preposterous. These platforms are in no position to evaluate what you're saying, and that means we have to be able to discuss it in public.
Well, that is what I'm calling for since many, many weeks, because the way the discussion is conducted right now is that some fact checkers reach out to some experts, and then you have some one-liners in their report, some one-liners that, so to say, contradict what I'm saying. And then the fact checker confronts me with this kind of, contradictory statements, so to say. That is not a discussion, and I'm asking all the time, for these experts to start a debate, right? Like we are discussing. Then things can be clarified, and arguments can, and we could. I would love to see a consensus on what is going to be the criteria that we all agree upon to say whether or not human intervention is driving immune escape, right? Because if there is really immune escape driven by human intervention in the way we have been discussing, then I think everyone will agree that this is not a good thing. This is really very problematic. But if we don't have criteria and if we don't agree upon, I mean, the only thing will be vaccinate everybody, right? Till not everybody unless everybody is vaccinated, it's not over, right? And that cannot be, according to my interpretation.
No, and the pressure to vaccinate everybody is incredible. The number of young people that I hear are being vaccinated is preposterous in light of the fact that there's really almost no reason to do it. No. Even if the vaccine is as safe and good as it's being portrayed, the fact is young people are already immune, and there's no reason to intervene in the.
The only caveat, Bret, is this was certainly the case when the wild strain came in, and I told my kids, okay, if you're obliged to, because you have to wear a mask in the store, for example, you have to do this, but don't do it when you are with friends, etc. They were not participating in mass gatherings anyway. But now the problem now is with these highly infectious variants, the likelihood is increasing that. Well, this is something we didn't discuss, but it's important to understand. When you are an asymptomatically infected, so you got infected with the virus without developing symptoms, during a short period in time, you will be developing antibodies, right? These are antibodies that are not very mature. And I'm not saying in all asymptomatically infected people, but in a fair extent, a fair number of asymptomatically infected people, they will develop antibodies that are not fully mature and that are short-lived. So as we discussed, these antibodies will be able to bind to the S protein, not neutralize it, but outcompete your innate immune response. So now with a highly infectious variant circulating, the likelihood that as a young guy or lady, you get a hit by the virus during that time where you are sitting on your immature antibodies becomes increasingly higher, right? And that is how we now also see how younger age groups without underlying diseases, people in perfect health, get severe COVID, right? So you see, these are criteria for me that are really important to analyze and to further discuss and to agree upon. If that is not done, and the only criterion is we go on till everybody gets vaccinated, young or old, no matter what, whether they are in good health or whatever, whether they're seropositive or seronegative, I mean, then it's really a war situation.
Well, that's very frightening. All right. Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. I look forward to hearing how this develops, and I do hope that I know people are taking your argument seriously privately. I think there's a lack of courage especially in and around academia, where people won't necessarily say what they understand because they're afraid of consequences. And in this case, the consequences for humanity are so immense that I think it is incumbent on people to at least point out that this is an argument that needs to be taken very seriously.
Well, there are top experts, much more famous than I am, who I know and who write me that, I'm right. But if you're really a top expert, of course, you are working in some of these communities that are now, deeply involved in driving these vaccination campaigns. So unfortunately, these people cannot speak up. And I think it's really, given what is at stake, it is, for me, it's a moral obligation. I could be employed, I could be whatever, this is so frightening to me. I have spent weeks and weeks and nights to understand what is going on. And having done my homework, the moral obligation to react is such that, this is for me the absolute priority, no matter what.
Well, I agree with you about the moral obligation of it. It's, of course, not entirely safe for me to put you on my channel either. I feel that same moral obligation. And I would just point out that I think we've lost track of how much risk people have taken through history when something was important. And to the extent that people may have fears about what happens career-wise to them if they speak an important truth, they need to recognize that lives are on the line. This is an argument that must be engaged, and it's time for them to step up. And I would say, to the extent that there are people who privately acknowledge that what you're saying is sensible, people who believe you are right and are in a position to change public opinion, I open this channel to them. If they'd like to come on and tell us what you've got right, what you've got wrong, what they think we ought to understand, I'm more than happy to host that discussion.
Well, I much appreciate that, Bret. I really do. And I'm also very much hoping for people ultimately, because it's really more than time to do so. Because as you will realize, right now things start to be very fast, to evolve very, very fast. If you see in some countries, because that is the other thing, every country is looking at its own situation. When I hear the news, for example, in Belgium, it's like the only country where we have a COVID pandemic, right? And the world is closing in on us. And it's like, I mean, if there is a double mutant in India that is resistant, for example, that is also my problem. That is your problem. That is everyone's problem. And it's like, oh, let's put the figures down. Let's try to put the figures down in Belgium or in Germany or in the UK, right?
If there was ever a situation in which we should put politics aside, put national boundaries aside, and team up to address a problem, this is it.
Yeah, pandemic is per definition a global thing, and our strategy is not global at all, right? Yeah, well, we could go on forever this, but I much appreciate you doing this and at least giving me an opportunity to talk about this. And frankly speaking, I think, Brett, we have been very scientific about this, right? I mean,
Yep.
yeah. So,
No.
yeah. Okay.
I think we have to continue to have this discussion, and I must say I greatly appreciate your courage and your insight. I think you're a force for good, and I am so glad that you chose to come on Dark Horse.
Yeah. Thank you so much.